Good afternoon. This is Doc D, and this is the asynchronous lecture for Monday and Labor Day, September 7th. And so uh, I think that the topic of the lecture for today is basically taking a chance to step back and just kind of absorb it all and think objectively about where you are in your life and where you're going. And so that's kind of the vein of where we're going with the lecture for today. And so let's get it started. So about me, 27 years military all told. Did about 11 years active duty. I enlisted at the age of 17 in the Army National Guard, and went from an E1 all the way to E8 Master Sergeant. And then at 19 years of service, I decided that I wanted to be an officer, and so I took a direct commission, and then I served 8 more years after that, achieving a rank of captain. And actually, I would be a major today if I had stayed in. I am a consummate learner. I have 4 degrees in various fields, and at last count I had over 100 different professional certifications, most of the instructor level, instructor trainer level. And so my whole philosophy about life and about education is that I love to learn, and I'm always trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I've always allowed my interest to drive where I'm going and what I'm doing. And it's been good for me. But because of that, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. I've got a lot of different fields of experience, and a lot of them overlap in some very interesting ways. And I think that as we progress through SIS 101, you will see a lot of those things start to show up. I've done a lot of teaching. I taught for Southern Illinois University, Ball State University, Indiana Wesleyan University, Ivy Tech, Taylor, and there's actually a few more in there that I taught for when I was overseas. One of the things that I think has served me very well is that whenever I would get into a position, I was always looking for, what's the next step? What's the next thing that I need to do? Where am I going from here? And then what do I need to do that? And so I think if you think about those in the context of your own life, maybe that might shed some light. Deuteronomy 15:10. Give generously to them and do so without a grudging heart. Then because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and everything you put your hand to. Love that. So to start with, we have to ask, what are your goals? What brings you happiness? What are you doing in this life? And might also ask, what is God doing in your life? So these are all things that are self-defined, and what you may be doing will be different than somebody else, and you may be at a much different place than your classmates, and it is all very self-defined. And so don't the race is only with yourself. There is no race with anybody else, and so just keep that in mind. So this is my good friend Don, and he and I train together frequently. He just most recently had a total hip replacement 3 months ago. This is 2018. He is 51 years old, and he just became an Ironman. And for those of you who don't know, that is swimming 2.4 miles, biking for 112, and then doing a full 26.2 mile marathon at the end of that. And that's our good friend Jess Sheely there with him. And so everybody's in different places. Everybody has different things they want to do with their life. And so you are going to drive where you are going, and I ask that you um, balance that equation with some of the things that we will talk about today. So as we go, we're going to talk about several different topics, 15, actually 16 of them, because there's a bonus one. And so those topics are going to be: act as though your every action would be on CNN, be on time, 20 minutes at the end of each day, perform every assigned task as if it will be your masterpiece, gossip, be the subject matter expert, don't be a yes person, understand the problem at hand, listen, and then set the example as a Christian. We also have take ownership, admit when you are wrong, the license to learn, the VIP treatment, and balance. So a lot of these topics overlap, and so we will see that as we go through this. That's how life is, that we have overlaps. All right. So act as though your every action would be on CNN, and then ethical people do the right thing even when no one is looking. And so when I first became a police officer, we had to go through the police academy, and in one of the first lectures we had talked about ethics, and so every police officer goes through some form of ethical training that involves these very things that I'm going to talk about. All right, and so very, very germane to what's going on in the world today, where people are calling out that the police have no ethics, they have no morals, and I don't personally agree with that. There are bad people everywhere, in every profession, and you can't judge a whole profession by the actions of a few. So if we look at things that for people that we consider to be ethical, there's some commonalities to that. And number one is when no one is looking. What are you doing when no one is looking? Do you do things that you would not normally do if people are around? So an example might be that you've got that honey bun that you just ate as you're driving down the road, and do you throw that outside because there's no one around, there's no other traffic? Or do you put that in a little bag on your seat and you take care of that later? All right. So this next thing that we're going to talk about is frozen turkeys. Was a lesson that was handed out in my police academy training on ethics, and it really struck home with me, and hopefully it will for you as well. So the scenario goes something like this: that a truckload, and when I say truckload, I mean a semi-trailer truckload of turkeys overturns on an overpass, and there are frozen turkeys just spread out all over the ground. They're everywhere. And so as you arrive and you're talking with the driver of the truck, your police officer, and the driver says, "Hey, take those turkeys, take some of them home because we can't sell them. They're just going to be garbage because they've touched the ground. We can no longer sell them, and so they're ruined. So if you want to take some, take some." And so if we place ourselves in that situation, and who could say no? I wouldn't take a turkey. I think that most of us would say, well, yeah, why not? I mean, because they're going to go to waste, right? I mean, that makes sense. But the instructor, his name was John Light, and he said, okay, now think about this. He says, so while you're busy loading up your trunk with these turkeys, we have a helicopter from CNN that's flying overhead, and they're live broadcasting you loading these turkeys into the back of your squad car. So all of a sudden do we have an ethical problem? And yes, we do have an ethical problem. Even though what we're doing is ethically good, it's ethically okay, the perception is that you are doing something that would not be. And especially with the way the media is viewing police now, I can very well picture some of the narrative that would come out of this. All right, and so the whole object of this lesson was to take a look at what you're doing and then step way back and look at it from a different perspective. All right, and you know, does that perspective coincide with your beliefs and how you would like to be perceived? All right, and then one of the questions would be, would I be okay with my mom, dad, or even my pastor seeing what I'm doing? Would I be okay with them seeing me on CNN doing the things that I'm doing? All right, and if you can't answer a good affirmative answer on that, then you probably need to stop and think about what you're doing. All right. So anyhow, that was a very powerful lesson for me, and hopefully it will hold something for you as well. All right, we're going to talk about beyond time. This is a big one for me, and this is the military training, and if you arrive 10 minutes early in the military, you're already late. All right, you really should be there at least 10 minutes early, and 15 to 20 minutes is more likely. All right, and but I think it also plays in the civilian sector as well. And I've had a lot of people that have worked for me over the years, and there were people who struggled with this. They like to show up literally at the moment of clocking in. If they needed to be at work at 8 o'clock, they would show up at 8 o'clock. And that and again, there's two ways to look at it. Number one, that hey, they're punctual, they're here when they're supposed to be. But on the other hand of that is that here's a person who is not allowing themselves any extra time. And so as you finish up your college education and you get ready for interviews, I hope that you think about this and give yourself extra time to get there. Be early and use that time to full effect. When you arrive early to an appointment or to whatever, it gives you time to get settled in, to get a game plan for the day, and to start off well. All right. The other side of this is that if you run into a traffic jam, there's a train stopped on the tracks, which happens a lot in Muncie, not so much up here, but a lot in Muncie. You have time to make up for that. All right. It will make you stick out, and and just do it. If you're on time, actually, when I say on time, I mean early, all the time, people notice. And I can remember I worked in the Department of Defense for the state of Indiana, managing all the educational programs for our Guard members, our 10,000 National Guard members. And my boss, we were in a meeting with a lot of powerful people, and he's in the middle of this meeting, he's like, yeah, we all need to be more like, and I was a lieutenant at that time, Lieutenant Doucher, who, he beats me here every morning, and every day he's here on time, he's early, and he's organized and getting his stuff together. All right, people will notice. All right. All right, this next one, 20 minutes at the end of each day, is something that I try to do regularly, and it really, really does help me. And so at the end of each day, I set aside 15 to 20 minutes where I organize my workspace, I clean up whatever it is I'm working on. If I'm working on a project, I'm putting tools up, I'm cleaning up the mess that's been made, and I'm basically getting things organized. All right, and so you think, well, what else? What does that do? Well, it gives me a chance to reflect on what I've already done for that day. Was it a good day? Was it a not so good day? But it gives me a chance to quietly contemplate as I'm doing this. I'm cleaning and organizing and getting prepared for the next day. All right, and so when I come in the next day, everything is wiped clean. It's a clean slate because all the mess has been cleaned up, all the tools were put up, and so I'm starting that new day already ahead of the game, and so it just sets your day up for success. Yeah, so this is something that I do. I don't make it every day, but man, I try to, and I would say more days than not I do this. And it allows me to clear my mind at the end of the day and leave work at work, and then I can go on to my next thing that I have to do. All right, and I would encourage you to try this, and don't just do it one day. Try doing it for a week or even 2 weeks, and see what it does for you. All right, next we're going to talk about perform every assigned task as if it will be your masterpiece. All right, and that's a bit of an overstatement, okay? But basically, and so I run the engineering project shop, and so one of the things that I said early on was that anything that I do in this shop that is going to leave this shop is a representation of me. And so what I want to do is, I don't want to take shortcuts. I want to make sure that I do everything to the best of my abilities. All right, and so an example would be, and this just happened this morning, is that I had another faculty member that needed some pieces of aluminum cut off to a specific length, and so that's literally a 5-minute job, right? But again, even these little pieces of aluminum represent me, and they represent my shop and what I do. And so I took the time to set each of these pieces of aluminum up in the metal lathe, and I faced off each end, and I dressed the corners, and so I made them into something that when you look at it, you're like, ooh, I kind of like that. And you want to pick them up, and you want to play with them, and that's what it's all about, is that take pride in what you do, and do it to the best of your abilities. Don't just do the bare minimum. All right. So again, you only get one chance to make a first impression. I've gotten so many compliments from people that do tours at Taylor University, and they walk through my shop, and they're like, "My goodness, it's so clean." And it's like, yeah, it is. And so we're referencing back to the previous slide here, where at the end of each day, I clean up the mess that I have, and I get everything ready so that when somebody walks in, if there's a mess, it's because I'm right in the middle of doing something and it's apparent. All right. So again, I'm not necessarily saying it has to be a masterpiece, but take pride in what you do, even if it's something very, very simple. All right, go the extra mile and make sure that what you are giving out is something that is worthy of you. All right, because it does. It represents you. All right, we're going to talk about gossip. All right, just don't do it. I mean, it's really easy to get sucked into conversations that can be detrimental to other people. And this goes back. I remember my mom saying this. When I was a child, if you can't say something positive, just don't say it at all. All right, and so it still holds true, especially in a professional world. Things that you might say to one person in confidence can be taken out of that confidence and used against you later. So just don't do it. And now with that being said, can I have factual conversations? Absolutely. But you have to balance. Am I being factual or am I gossiping? All right. And if you can't back something up with facts, then it's gossip, and just don't do it. All right. This next thing is called be the subject matter expert. This is an Army thing. Be, know, and do. All right. And in one of the early slides I talked about, I'm always looking at position improvement. And so this talks about be, know, and do. So you know your job and you live your job. And I actually talked about this in SIS 101 the other day about 1 up and 2 down, knowing the job of the 2 people below you and then 1 person up, knowing what their job is, what their responsibilities are, and being able to step in at a moment to do that job. And so that's really what this is all about, is be the expert at your job, know the jobs below you that support you, know what they are, be able to step in. It gives you a unique perspective if you understand and know the jobs of the people that work for you. And on the flip side of that, by understanding and knowing the job of the person that supervises you, in the event that they get promoted or they have to step away for something, you can step in and be successful and effective. All right, be, know, and do. Don't be a yes man. Don't be a yes person. Um, this is hard, especially when you're first starting out. In that, employer. There's this concept called mission creep, and it's an army. It's an army. It's a military term, really, more than an army term. But so if you're good at what you do, um, employers tend to keep tacking things on, and so you'll find yourself um, adding more and more responsibilities and more duties, and as long as you're saying yes, they're going to keep adding to it, especially if you're good at what you do. All right, so don't be afraid to say, my plate's full, and this is something that I could probably take lessons from myself. I do have a tendency to keep myself busy and keep my plate full, and there are some times that I overfill the plate, and so I have to suffer for a month or two before I can offload something. All right, but just keep in mind that especially as a young person starting out, that if you overload yourself, you reduce your effectiveness, and it can start to uh, affect your ability to do your job. All right, and so don't just go along with what they say. Don't be afraid to say, hey, um, I don't know about this. All right, and on the flip side of that coin, also for the other meaning of don't be a yes person is that you know when you're out in the workplace, be an individual, all right, and it's okay to have differing views and differing opinions from people. Don't just go along with what the group is saying, because what you'll find is that a lot of times there's one or two people who actually have some really valid insight on something, and sometimes they're afraid to give that insight. All right, so you know, be willing to give your own opinion and to not feed into the whole yes culture. So, and also, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. If somebody asks you something and you don't know, then say, I don't know. Um, but I'll find out. But, so many people get fed into this that, I have to know all the answers. Well, no, you don't. Not everybody knows all the answers. All right, understand the problem at hand. The next slide is listen. Um, these two really, I probably could combine them, all right, but we won't. So understand the problem at hand, just basically, ask questions and make sure that you completely understand what that other person is saying. Develop a thorough understanding of what they're. So try to look at it from their perspective, all right? And sometimes it's very difficult to do. But once you've done that, then make up your mind of what the suitable response will be. All right, but again, spend the time and effort to gain a good understanding. And the next slide leads right into that. So, no, really, just listen. Uh, so many times people will hear the words that are coming out of your mouth, but they're not understanding the intent behind it. All right, and so try to be that person that develops that full understanding. Ask questions to clarify meaning, and make sure that you're able to summarize those back, and gain an acknowledgement from that person that yeah, that's what I mean. All right. So anyhow, those two go pretty much hand in hand. I really could combine them, but I think they're okay as they are. All right, set the example as a Christian. Um, let's see, rule number one. So, this is difficult, especially in a workplace. There are a lot of Christians who are wary of letting people know their faith. And I've been surprised over the years at the number of people who are Christians, but they're quiet Christians, right? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying that you know um, they just kind of get along to go along. And as a Christian, as a practicing Christian, as someone who is willing to witness and to help people develop their own relationship with Christ and to develop our own relationship with Christ, we have a difficult task, especially in today's world. All right, and so we all sin and we all make mistakes. And as an Army guy, my language has not always been the greatest. And there are times when I still slip back into that role, and they don't happen all that often, but it's embarrassing for me when that happens. And I just have to own up to it, and gee, sorry, but you will sin, you will make errors, but just apologize as you make those errors, correct the behavior, and again, try to do better. You will be surprised at the number of Christians that are in the workplace. And God works in mysterious ways. He really does. And as I think back through my life, God has used me in many, many ways that I could never have foreseen. And so just believe in yourself, believe in God, and believe in your relationship with God, and know that you will make errors, and that when you do, just do the best that you can to correct that and move on. All right. Take ownership. This is something that's really key, and this has been one of the recipes, I think, one of the key contributors to my success in the world. And so don't be afraid to take ownership of things. So take ownership of a project, take ownership of a problem, commit yourself, and make verbal commitments that you're going to take on this, whatever it might be. All right? And then try your best to keep those commitments. And are there going to be times when you make a commitment to do something by X date, and despite your best efforts, you're just not going to make that? It happens. It really does. It happens frequently. And I have found that, over the years, if you communicate your progress, letting people know where you're at and what you're doing, and then more importantly, to communicate the needs. And so a lot of times what you'll find is that as you're working on a problem or a project, you'll find that, you need resources, whether it be money or materials or knowledge. You need something that's outside of the scope of what you have access to. If you communicate those needs up the chain to your supervisors, most of the time they're going to provide those to you. All right, and it will really build you up. It will build your reputation up, because you're willing to take on commitments. You keep people apprised of where you're at and what you're doing and what you need. All right, and so this will do you well. All right. Admit when you're wrong. What? As I said earlier, on setting examples, we're all going to make mistakes. Shoot, I make mistakes just about every day. And mistakes are a chance to gain experience. I mean, if you look at people with a lot of experience, it's because they made a lot of mistakes. All right, and so own your mistakes. Yep, I did that. Learn from it, and try not to make the same mistake twice. And so the funny, I don't know what you would call it, but one of the sayings is that experience allows you to realize when you make the same mistake twice. Well, try not to do that. But that's how we learn. We make mistakes, and if you use those mistakes in a positive manner, they will build you up. They will make you more capable, and it will be something that's beneficial from you. And most supervisors, most leaders understand that, if people are making their best attempt, they're still going to make mistakes. And so, if we can learn from those and grow from those, then mistakes will build you. All right, so the license to learn. This is one of the things that, as a young person, and I know I did too, that you're getting ready to graduate, and so, you are it. You are the hottest thing that just hit the market, right? You've got all this education, and you're going to go out and you're going to change the world. All right, well, you need to back up. Take a step back, because what you've done is your degree is a license to learn, because all the things that we've learned don't take into account the real world. And so use this to your advantage, that it is a license to learn. And if you walk into that next job and you've got a chip on your shoulder because you are the hottest thing since sliced bread, you're going to have a rude awakening, because unless you're a progeny, you are not. All right, and so you're going to find out real quick that the people that you supervise know a lot more about your job than you do, especially when you first start out. And so those people can really make your job easy, or they can make it hard. All right, and so listen, go into it with the idea that hey, I'm going into this and I'm going to learn from these people who have been here before. All right, and hopefully your supervisor is also one who believes that hey, we've got to teach this person how it is in real life versus what it is in theory. All right, VIP treatment. There's a lot of people that use some semblance of this in their motivational talks, and that's because it is so important. Treat every person that you meet as a VIP, as a very important person. Everybody that you meet has an integral part to play, and especially in a workplace, and people get so hung up on titles and job responsibilities that they forget that if somebody's not cleaning the stool, then sooner or later that stool is going to get kind of nasty. And even though you might be the CEO, all right, if there's nobody cleaning that stool, it's going to be dirty. All right, so every person that you meet in the workplace, especially, has an integral function to that, and the entire system revolves around those people. And so and I would even say that in a lot of cases, your CEO is probably your least important person, because if the CEO moves on, everybody else is still able to do their jobs. All right, we might need some more guidance on where we're going overall, but everybody that's left is still able to do their jobs. All right. One of the great things about developing that relationship with everybody within your workspace is that when you have a relationship, they are much more likely to come to you earlier rather than later when there's a problem. And so, this can really benefit you in the long run, in that you are aware of problems before they really become a problem. If you catch something early, it's usually a whole lot easier to fix it earlier rather than later. All right, and they might help you when helping you might be a little bit outside of their job contract. All right, and so just another little tenet to go with this is that as you develop relationships with people in your workplace, especially for those who are working for you, they are going to share more and more of their life, and not just their professional life, but they'll want to share their personal problems and issues with you because they trust you. And so I can remember back many years ago, when I had a secretary that actually worked for me, that when I first started there was just always combative. It didn't matter what I said, what I did, she was always trying to work around it. And then over the course of time, she grew to know and respect me as a person, and then what I was doing. And I still remember the first day that she came in and sat down beside my desk and started to tell me about the troubles that she was having with her husband. And at the time I really had difficulty in like, okay, what am I supposed to do here? All right. But now in retrospect, I can see that she had grown to the point where she trusted me and was comfortable sharing things, and was essentially looking for help and looking for guidance. And so, respect people, get to know people, develop a relationship with people. All right, and this is the hardest one of them all. And this is something that I struggle with daily, and we probably all do. All right, and so we've got all these things that are vying for our attention, our time, our resources. We have Christ, we have family, we have work, we have play, we have rest. And as we go through life, we will find that the importance of these things will rise and fall and shift, and the alignment will change depending upon what we're doing. And I can say for a certainty that there have been times in my life where I wasn't living for Christ, and there were other times that family was much less important than work, and there was a lot of time that I wasn't getting the play and the rest that I needed. And I can think back when I was a young man, and for 4 years I was supervising a large facility, and I mean it really was an all-encompassing job, and so work took forefront to everything else. And I wasn't getting out and enjoying myself. I wasn't getting adequate rest, and at the end of 4 years I was a wreck. And so I had to step back and actually stepped away from that, and tried to put some balance back in my life. And you will witness this. You will experience this firsthand in your own life. Is that as life changes, you will shift what you focus on. And so we've got to have all this. All this stuff has to be part of our life. And there are people who are far better at it than I am, because again I struggle with this every day, and devoting adequate time and resources to all of these things. Enough said. All right, and then the final thing, little bonus advice. All right, so after you graduate, and if you're a freshman and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's 4 years away, well, that's right around the corner. All right. So a lot of times people get that first job, and the first thing you want to do is go out and buy a new car, and you think, I've gone to school for 4 or 5 years, and I've earned this. All right, and I'm not nobody's saying you didn't earn it, but maybe that's not the most prudent thing to do, because what you're going to have is it's expensive to live, and especially if you're living in college, and so you have a set amount of expenditures. Once you get out in the real world, you're going to find that, man, there's a lot of debt that goes along with just living. All right, a lot of students come out with student loans, credit cards, rent, recurring monthly bills, electric, gas, water, trash pickup, all that good stuff, insurance. It eats away at your check really, really fast. All right, and so one of the first things that I tell people is that once you get out and you get your first job, you need to sit down and make a real budget. What does it actually cost me to live, and to live the way that I want to? Because we may have to adjust what we're doing. All right. And then I also suggest that you put 20% of your income away for insurance purposes. All right. And it's walk-in money, because there will be times when you take a job with a company, and then a short time later you realize, I really don't belong here. All right, and that is not a good place to be. I've been there a few times, and so if you have set money back with each and every paycheck, and if you can't afford 20%, well, put back what you can afford, but make sure that you're putting something back. All right. That money will come in handy because when you're in a situation where you're working for somebody that doesn't respect you or doesn't care about you, and they're not in line with your values, the best thing you can do is walk away. And by having set that money back, you have the ability to step away from that and do something for yourself. All right. And then the last piece of advice is that the largest single contributor to a person's net worth on average is owning your own home. So when you get into a job that you think you might be there for a while, start thinking about what does it take to own my own home. And at least that way, when you're making payments every month, you're building equity in your home. You're not just sending money out to somebody else on rent. Talk to you out. Hope you have a great day.